Right, so KOTD3, the quarterfinals are now done, and we can see who's moved on to the semifinals. And basically, this video is two parts. First, a review of the quarterfinals, so I'm just going to go quickly over what went down, and then the second part is talking about the semifinal matchups and also predictions for the finals. So, the quarterfinals. Really, to understand the story of the quarterfinals, you got to start in the group stage. Specifically, I want to attract your attention to Group C, because I think this is what the spiciness of Group C really changed the look of what we have in the quarterfinals. So Group C was Doubt, Leary, Nikov, Winchester. I think everyone agreed that Leary was going to get out of this group and that Winchester probably wasn't going to get out of this group. So I think that it was, when you look at this group from the beginning, it was close between Doubt and Nikov about which one of those two is going to get out of the group. I'm talking, this is before the games were played, because Doubt's level was, there's a lot of, no pun intended, doubt regarding his level, regarding his performance, and Nikov looked pretty strong going into this tournament. Looked like he could take down someone like Doubt, or at least match head to head with him. So basically, Group C is the one that sort of messed up the quarterfinals, because Doubt, no one predicted Doubt to get out of this group 2-0. I think everyone had Leary 2-0. So let me just show you the impact of Doubt going 2-0 in this group. If Leary gets out 2-0 in this group, we would instead have in the quarterfinals Hera versus Doubt and Velez versus Leary. Instead, what we got was Hera Leary in the quarterfinals. Like, that's just mental. That's bonkers. Hera Leary easily could have been the finals of this tournament, right? So just of that tiny little switch in Group C of Doubt going 2-0 and beating Leary in a super close series, that, in a 5-game series, that switches up the look of the quarterfinals. Instead, we get Hera Leary and Doubt Velez. Doubt Velez is a true quarterfinals, but Hera Leary, there's no reason why Hera and Leary should be meeting in the quarterfinals. So I think that is the story of the quarterfinals, that determined really the look of the quarterfinal matchups. And you get a little bit of that from the MBL Yo group, because Yo not getting out 2-0, which everyone predicted, also switched up the matchups, and instead of getting Viper MBL, for example, which would have been a good quarterfinal matchup, and Yo versus Dogan, we instead get Viper Yo, which also could have been the finals of this tournament. Like, if you just look at, if I just tell you the matchups, hey, we have Viper Yo or Hera Leary, easily those could either be semifinals at least, or even the finals of this tournament. But instead we get those two crazy bonkers matchups in the quarterfinals. And the bottom bracket of the quarterfinals is kind of weak, honestly. Like MBL Dogan, Doubt Velez, not super strong in terms of matchups. So yeah, the spiciness, I think, especially from Group C, really messed up the bracket for the quarterfinals. And yeah, so because of that, the quarterfinals, I think, sort of used up some of the potential or the interesting matchups of the tournament a little bit earlier. Right. So if you look at the bottom half, let's just start with the bottom half of the bracket. So first matchup, MBL Dogan. MBL, like, dude, he's just super strong right now. He stomped Dogan. And MBL, what I find about his style is that he's looking a little bit too polished, a little bit too secure. And I think that is going to come back to maybe hurt him later on in the semifinals or even in the finals, because I don't think he's been necessarily pushed to the limit of his gameplay, to his level. Maybe by Mr. Yo in that Group D game, where it went to 5 games, he was starting to get to the limit there. But I feel like his ride has been relatively smooth because of his strong level, right? I think he's a little bit underrated right now, but hasn't necessarily been pushed. So he stomps then Dogan in his quarterfinal matchup. So pretty easy path to the semifinals, because he took that game off. That game 5 off Yo in the group stage, in the winners match. So that's one of the first quarterfinals. Second quarterfinal was Doubt Velez. I'd say that it's not necessarily the most interesting matchup, but man, did I enjoy watching this series. I loved watching this series. It was super back and forth, super aggressive. Doubt is always like, his tactics are always super interesting. So yeah, I really enjoyed watching this series, but it wasn't necessarily the highest caliber of players, which is good because I think that they matched up good. So Velez takes it in 5 games. He moves on to the semifinals against MBL. So for this bottom half of the bracket, I think MBL is clearly a level above the rest of the three that are here. And in my opinion, he's moving on to the finals. So we're going to see probably MBL in the finals after he takes down Velez in the semis. Now, the upper part of the quarterfinals, man, like I said, what a mess. Easily, those two quarterfinals could have been the finals of the tournament if I just tell you the names that are involved. So the first quarterfinal, Viper, Mr. Yo. I'm not going to talk too much about it because there was an amazing thread on Reddit. I'm going to give credit to the user right now. By user Pastar Sauce, who basically broke down the fact that Yo totally mind gamed and read Viper like a book, and just counterpicked into him and punished him for every one of his Civ picks, and punished the mentality too of the Viper and how the Viper thinks going into a matchup. So honestly, like Yo, I love Yo because he's not necessarily the best player in the world, but when I watch him, I feel like he could just ruin anybody's day. Like, you just match him up against any player and he'll just come in and, like this, in my opinion, he ruined Viper's day by 3-0ing him, by just outsmarting him in terms of the picks and everything. So go read the thread if you haven't read it. It's really interesting. But yeah, like, I just love Mr. Yo, the fact that he can just come in and just wreck someone out of nowhere. And he wrecked the Viper. So Yo moves on to the semis. The second match was Hera Leary. Arguably, again, another amazing, maybe one of the best series of the tournament because of the level of the players, because of the caliber of the players. So for me, it was as enjoyable as the Dal Velez game, but then it's just, you have that extra layer. It's like, these are basically two top 3 players. So yeah, I'm kind of disappointed this wasn't, like, let's say a little bit later on in the tournament. Feels kind of, I don't enjoy the fact that we wasted all this potential and all these storylines of, like, the two teammates meeting in the quarters, and only one of them makes it through. In my opinion, it could have gone either way, this match. The Hera Leary series. Let's go back to what I said about the pick from Hera. So he didn't decide to ban Cumans because I don't think, what I assume is that Leary doesn't necessarily pick Cumans as a Civ. He hasn't shown that he uses Cumans, so he didn't necessarily need to go for that. And I think Hera was a little bit worried about the strength of Aztecs, and that's why he went for that ban. But again, I understand Hera's mindset. I just feel like other players like Yo, Viper, even MBL, they use their picks to punish their opponent and gain an advantage, where I think Hera is using it more defensively, where he just doesn't want to lose to some cheese strategy or some cheese Civ, or a Civ that he considers OP, such as Cumans or Aztecs. So I think that is maybe a weakness of him right now, because he has a lot of win conditions, but this seems like a little bit of a weakness because in Game 5, Slavs versus Chinese Game 5, I think that left him a little bit weak and a little bit exposed, where I think Chinese is clearly a better Civ in that scenario. So maybe the fact that he's a little bit defensive and not super offensive with his picks, it hurts him when a series goes down the stretch, because he has the skill to win 3-0. And I think that is maybe his win condition for like a quarterfinals or a semifinals, is you can't let it go to a Game 5, because then you're backing him into a corner. I think the longer a series goes, the worse it is for Hera. Contrary to like another player where you feel like an MBL, for example, where you feel like he could win from attrition, or he could go to a Game 5 and still perform at the same level and still have his picks and feels really solid. So that's just a comment. I don't have a super big argument to support it. That's just how I feel about Hera going down the stretch in series like this. Again, it reminds me a little bit of Red Bull Wall to the finals, where it goes down the stretch and then Leary has the skill to take it over the line. So the semis now, we get Mr. Yo and Leary. So this is more like the second part of the video there. I sort of mixed the two parts, not very clear, but second part of the video is looking at the semis and the finals. Basically, if you look at this on paper, whoever comes from the top bracket, whoever gets out of the top bracket of hell of this tournament and moves it into the finals is probably going to win the tournament. Because when you think about it, let's say Mr. Yo, for example, if Mr. Yo takes down Leary, he will have taken down Leary and the Viper, and then he gets to the finals and probably takes down MBL. So yeah, that makes sense, because you're taking out two top players on your way to the finals. I think anybody who comes and meets him in the final is going to be a step down from his semis and finals and quarterfinals matchups. Like MBL is clearly, I think, a level below Leary and a level maybe equal to Viper, but Viper still has that mysticism about it, his myth, his legend. So yeah, I think that if Yo takes this, he's probably going to take the finals. And if you do the same exercise with Leary, you get the same result basically. It's like, okay, well, he's taking down Hera, and then he would have taken down Mr. Yo, and then now he's meeting, let's assume, MBL in the finals. Well, he's also the favorite in the finals. So I think the favorite of the tournament is going to be the winner of that first semifinal, Mr. Yo Leary, and in my opinion, it's going to be the winner of the tournament. Whoever wins that semifinal, the path is clear to the victory of the tournament because you're a caliber above the two players on the bottom bracket. Let's go to the bottom bracket. I think MBL Velez. I think MBL takes the series. He looks to me to be much stronger and in a much more secure position regarding his skill compared to Velez. He looks less shaky. He looks really polished. But like I said, since he looks super polished, I assume he's going to go to the finals. But then, in my opinion, he hasn't been super tested to his level apart from Mr. Yo in that Group D winners match. So I feel like if he gets to the finals, MBL is going to really get pushed to the limit, especially by a player like, for example, Mr. Yo, who's going to study him, he's going to mind game him, and he could come and ruin your day real quick. So I think that MBL, the challenge is that when he's going to get to the final match, assuming he wins the semifinals, he's going to get pushed to his limit, and then we're going to see where the cracks are. We're going to see where his weaknesses are. Because right now he just looks so polished, especially in the way he took down Dogan 3-0 in the quarterfinals. So to recap, basically, I feel like we lost a little bit of storyline potential by blowing these two quarterfinal matchups. Could have been matchups from the finals of the tournament or semifinals, but we lose two top players, Hera and Viper, in the quarterfinals early. Basically, in my opinion, the winner of this first semifinal is going to win the tournament because you just look at the level of players you had to beat to just survive and get there. It's crazy. And I think MBL is going to make it to the finals, and whoever he matches up against, it's going to expose him a little bit, and it's going to be a much bigger step up in terms of skill, that finals matchup for MBL. So let's just wait and see what happens this weekend.